Hi, Alice. It's Richard Answer here from Once Rules and Trust. Just wanted to have a quick overview regarding those who are business owners. So, if that is you, I highly encourage you to listen to this video training. So, really quick, the question I want to ask you is: do you actually have an exit strategy for running the business? Now, it doesn't really matter what type of business you're running. You could be operating as a limited company director. You could be operating from a partnership. You could even be operating as a sole trader or any other type of business entity or setup, whether that's an LLP, etc. The main thing is if you operate with either some kind of control, whether that be in the form of shares, if you're a director, or partnership, you could have in shares or ownership of the partnership, whatever your controlling entity is or amount is. As a sole trader, you may have quite a valuable business and haven't decided to set it up as a limited company. But the ultimate thing I'm trying to get to, or the point I'm trying to get to here, is what is your exit strategy? What is your plan? And the reason I'm asking that question is if an event takes place, especially if it's a form of death, it could be a long-term illness or sickness. What happens to your share of that business or control? Especially if you're a limited company director or a partner who makes those important decisions. If you are required to have an input and you're unable to do so, then who steps in and does it on your behalf? If a death takes place, where do your shares or control of the company go to? Have you decided about that? Most people, especially business owners, I'm aware of that. It's far, far, far away. It's long term. It's not going to happen to you right now. And so it's important both to your colleagues within the business and to your family members that something like this is discussed and planned. All right. Normally we do our will or some kind of legacy planning, succession planning, and the business is tucked to one side. It's not really very important. But in actual fact, there's a lot of benefits to planning your business early, and there's a lot of benefits to understanding the dynamics of how your business should be looked after if you're no longer around. Now, most people might talk about life insurance and director's insurance, which is fine, but there's a lot more to it than that. So what I wanted to kind of highlight just really briefly is looking into something called a business will. Now, that could be in the form of what typically either be a shareholders agreement if you're own shares in a company, something to look into, with or some kind of a cross options agreement. Now, if you haven't heard of these terms before, I'll explain them in a bit more detail. But ultimately, a shareholders agreement would mean if you are a shareholder of a company and you own a significant amount of shares, or even considered to be a principal shareholder in your company, if you were to pass away yesterday, what happens to your holdings, your assets? What happens to your shares? If you are able to make significant decisions or another director cannot proceed without your input and vice versa, and you're no longer around, do you have a backup plan? If there's a falling out in a company, whether it's a disagreement or whatever that might be, do you have rules of engagement in place as to how do we proceed in the event that there's a disagreement as controlling shareholders? All these needs to be discussed. And if it's not in writing, it can be very easy to forget or willfully forget. If there's no, communication because of a falling out, and it's got so far that no one's talking or no one's able to get to some kind of a stage of agreement, or it's gone expensive and legal, we could avoid that had you put shareholders agreements in place. Cross options agreement, it's similar, but ultimately you're given the option to family members or to other directors within the company to either buy your shares out if the family don't want to take over from you or don't understand your business, don't know what to do, unaware of what you do in a business going forward. It's good to have a cross options agreement in terms of buying your shares out, giving someone else the opportunity to buy your shares in exchange for your family members or loved ones to enjoy the benefits of what you've worked hard for. So just these two elements can comprise part of a business will. Not to go on for too long, but there's also tax benefits as a business owner. especially inheritance tax. Okay, capital gains tax, but I'm not going to go into that too much now. But inheritance tax specifically, if you're a trading business, then you need to look into something called business relief, where you can claim up to 100% tax relief on inheritance tax in the event of a death taking place. Lots of clever things you can do with this. So it's important, especially if your business has some value, your shares has some value. Notwithstanding just shareholders in a limited company, it's any form of business. Okay, so if it's a partnership and you have significant control over that, or a 50-50 split, or whatever it might be, however it's set up, you need to consider exactly what I've just said. Also, if you're a sole trader, you don't need to worry about shares, but how are you going to pass on that business? Do you have any plans once you are no longer here to pass that business on? What's the goal? What's the long-term strategy? Normally when you start a business, it's a good idea to know what your exit strategy is if you've got a decent business plan. But most people may not have a business plan of any form, or haven't really decided what your exit plan is, or how you're going to grow the business or take it to another level. So it's worth sitting down with someone to discuss that if you haven't done so already. And it's definitely worthwhile looking into a strategic plan in the event that you don't fulfill your goals because of an event that is unforeseen, such as death or long-term illness. All right, definitely worth considering. That's me for now. We'll go into more detail in another video or article. All right, thanks for your time. If you enjoyed this, feel free to share it. And as usual, if you put a thumbs up, that will really help me. Even put a thumbs down, because that will help me to know if the content's been valuable or not. And if you've got any comments or questions, then feel free to do so in the comments below if you're watching this via YouTube. All right, thanks very much. Cheers.